Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our webinar today on alternative proteins, balancing food quality and quantity, organized by SGInnovate in partnership with SMUAI. My name is Brian from SGInnovate, and for those of you who don't know about us, we are a government-backed investor in Singapore with the mission to build deep tech innovations in AI, healthcare, food tech, agri-tech, and more. At SGInnovate, our work involves connecting with the global deep tech ecosystem, working with an entrepreneurial scientists to bring their innovative research from lab to market, as well as to develop deep tech talent. Today, we have a wonderful panel of experts in the food tech space who will be sharing their thoughts on the role of AI in the alternative protein space, as well as how alternative proteins could play a key role in fulfilling Singapore's 30 by 30 goal. We would also like to encourage our audience today here to share their thoughts on this topic and engage with our speakers by using the Q&A box below. And so, with no further ado, I will now pass the time to our event partner, Supo, who will be sharing more about SMUAI before we go into the discussion for the day. Supo, please.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening and welcome to everyone for taking part this evening for the event. My name is Sipo and I'm the president for my club, SMU Artificial Intelligence Club. Just a brief introduction, our club is a student-led club and we aim to improve thought leadership on AI in the SMU community and beyond. One of the few activities our club does is organizing for panel events with different industry leaders to share more about their perspective and insights on how their industry may work with AI, as well as developing and publishing articles on those valuable insights and opinions through our various platforms. We are incredibly grateful and thankful to be working with SGInnovate, as well as all the speakers for joining us today on the topic of food tech, most notably the trending alternative food and its various forms. We hope that everyone will learn something new or even perhaps discover some new insights and ideas about the applications of alternative proteins. Now I'd like to hand the time over to David to actually take over. David, please.
Thanks a lot, Sipo. Could I have all the panelists to turn on their videos and the microphones, please? Right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David, and I'm part of the team at SGInnovate that looks at venture building and investing into agri-food startups. It's my pleasure today to be moderating the session, as I think we're going to have a very enjoyable time discussing and learning about alternative proteins from our panelists. So on that note, could I have each panelist give us a brief introduction about themselves, their work and interest areas? Let's begin with Dr. Satya, followed by Kelvin, Prof. William, and Prof. Benjamin. Dr. Satya, please.
David, thanks SGInnovate and SMU as well. Pleasure to be here. I'm Sandhya Sriram, the CEO and co-founder of Shiok Meats. Shiok Meats is Singapore and Southeast Asia's first cell-based meat company. We predominantly work on cell-based seafood, which is, and we concentrate on crustaceans, so shrimp, crab, lobster, crayfish. We started up in 2018 and hoping to commercialize our products next year. We're still in R&D, trying to scale up, and yeah, it's been exciting. When we started in 2018, there was hardly any talks about alternative protein in Singapore, and then we had this whole boom happen in 2019, and pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kelvin. I'm the Asian Director for Green Monday. Green Monday, as the name implies, means go green on Monday, or at least once a week. The whole program about Green Monday is targeted at flexitarians or omnivores, if you prefer, folks who are thinking about or have made that change to adopt a more plant-based diet, and that's Green Monday. Green Monday was founded in 2012. And we started as a social foundation. And over the years, we've started to incorporate products as well. So in 2015, we started distributing products. We now have 31 brands across the Green Monday platform, being able to substitute most proteins out there, from the various meat proteins to non-dairy proteins, as well as cheeses, sauces, eggs, and so on. And now we've been in Singapore for 2 years. Singapore is our ASEAN office, and we use Singapore as our launch pad for ASEAN. Recently, we've opened Green Common, which is our retail/restaurant concept, which has been in Hong Kong since 2015. We invite all of you to come and patronize us. We're at Vivo City. It's not just a restaurant, it's actually a place where you can try, taste Future Food 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Prof. William?
Hi, my name is William Chen. I'm the director of Food Science and Technology program at the NTU. So that program is not just about education. We also run the research activity and industry engagement and government collaboration. So the focus of our R&D is more on the food waste upcycling and how to connect this R&D into the food chain and the food system in Singapore. And so this is, we work very closely with government agencies, like for example, with our panelist, Dr. Ben Smith. And also we work also with the industry, including short meat. So this is roughly what we do. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, my turn. So my name's Ben Smith, and I'm actually very interested to be on this panel and learn about what everyone's doing in this fun and innovative space of alternative proteins, novel foods, novel cultured meats, those sorts of things. Because my background is actually as a food safety scientist, safety assessor, food quality, and I'm really interested to look at how we can help bring these sorts of products and new innovations to market safely and quickly. And as William said, Prof. William, working very closely with him and his team to look at how we support that from innovation through to market, but also with the industry as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ben. So to the panel, to the audience, as you can see, we have representatives from both academia and industry. So feel free to send in your most challenging questions via the Q&A. They will answer them, not me, they will answer them. So let me kickstart with a simple question first. The question I have in mind is, what are alternative proteins? Could we have Dr. Satya and Kelvin to share more with us about cell-based and plant-based alternative proteins, please?
Sure. Happy to start off. Kelvin, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and then you can, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I guess alternative proteins are different sources of proteins that you can get without the traditional source, which is currently either plant source or animal source. So we get most of our meat and seafood from animals. And we get, of course, if you're vegetarian or vegan, you get your protein sources from plants or even fermentation, which is picking up a lot recently. So what has happened in the last couple of years is everything from ethical reasons to environmental reasons to climate change to the way people think, consumers are thinking about food and protein. This whole stream of alternative proteins has come up. It's not so new, actually. It has been there. We have been eating in Asia. We've been eating tofu and soy and other types of lentils and grams for a very long time. But I think what's happened over time is that plant-based meat companies brought out the fact that they could use plants to make meat without harming the environment and animals and so on. But for us as cell-based meat companies, what we're producing is real meat, and what we do is take stem cells to make real meat and seafood. Given the fact that we are going to be 10 billion people, by 2050 in the world, there is going to be a tremendous need of protein, and it has to be a good balance between plant-based, cell-based, and now the upcoming insect-based protein that's coming up in the rest of the world as well. So why we call it alternative proteins is traditionally it was from animals, and right now we're trying to replace it with a different source, but that can satisfy consumers on the taste profile as well as become economically viable for everybody to buy. So that's what alternative proteins are. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Sanya pretty much covered it for us. I mean, from a Green Monday perspective, it's all about accessibility. It's about convenience. It's about price. So not only are you required to substitute the protein, for us, substituting meat protein with plant-based proteins, you need to also make it relevant, applicable to the cuisine, as well as to the day part that you're trying to serve, right? So what we try to do typically when we engage chefs or restaurants or caterers or even schools in Singapore, we start with just taking out the meats or the seafood and then replacing it with plant-based alternatives, and then using the existing cooking platforms the existing sources so that they're accustomed to those flavor profiles, and then just replacing that textural experience with a plant-based protein. Obviously, fortifying with lots of iron, calcium, all the goodness associated with plant-based, and stripping out all the unsavory parts of meat-based. So kind of getting your cake and eat it, literally.
Oh, thank you, Kelvin and Dr. Sandhya. So personally, I've tried the cell-based meat, the plant-based, and also insect alternative proteins as well since the earlier days. I must say that over the years, the taste and flavor profile has improved significantly. Nowadays, I can't really tell the difference. You know, as long as delicious, I'm very happy with it. So one of our popular companies, AI Palette, leverages on AI to keep track of consumer food preferences. And despite the challenging year last year, alternative proteins is one of the emerging and dominant trends. So the next question I have for all of our panelists is, how has AI accelerated the R&D or product development process for alternative proteins? We know AI is used in instances where new recipes are being generated, new flavor profiles are being found. Perhaps we can have Prof. Ben to give us some perspective, given his past experience in the Swiss flavor and fragrance company, before the rest of the panelists can chime in with their perspectives as well.
Sure. So I think AI is a tool that has a lot of usability, and it's really going to push things forward. And as you iterated, it's been actually applied to helping develop new recipes, look at how we can actually, in the flavor industry, replace the flavorists by understanding how different materials go together and building new recipes. And a lot of companies like IBM Watson and stuff have done interesting work there. But really, I think what we have to remember is that these tools are helping us do things that we already do better, and being able to mine and do it quicker. And so from my perspective, one of the areas where I really find AI useful is in understanding the protein structure, new protein structures. And that's important whether you're looking at it from an ingredient development perspective, understanding functionality, how do these new proteins interact with other ingredients, or from a safety perspective, understanding the structure and whether they may bind or interact with human immune cells and things and result in, say, allergies. So using the computational tools and the learning that AI provides, we can actually answer those questions very quickly and get a better idea how to use proteins before even going to the bench.
Thank you, Prof. Ben. Would our other panelists have some perspective to share as well? Yes.
I can add in. So I think AI is a very crucial part of everything that we do right now. I don't think we can escape the whole AI developments that are happening. So constantly as a startup, as a company, we are reliant a lot on AI and a lot of software. Like Prof. Ben mentioned, why should you do so many experiments, or why should you spend so much time on wet lab when you can do a lot on computational side or using AI? You can actually reduce the manpower, you can reduce the cost, you can reduce the amount of experiments and the time taken. So that actually helps. So we made it a point to hire a computational person and an analysis person, so he or she can work on various projects that we have around the board. And our idea is actually to grow that team as we move forward, because with our manufacturing plant for cell-based technology, where we are not going to use antibiotics or any sort of chemicals to kind of keep the food extremely sterile and clean, we want to make sure the whole process is automated. So for that as well, we need a lot of AI in place for making sure that human intervention is as low as possible or even close to nil. So I think we just need to embrace the fact that AI is going to run a lot of the things that we're going to do. But at the same time, we as human beings are very important, because we are the ones programming the AI there. So we have to be sure of what we want and how we want to set it so that AI is able to enable us to get to that point faster and cheaper.
Dr. Sandhya, if you could just quantify the amount of efficiency the deploying AI helps in your product development process, assuming that you used to take, for example, all 4 weeks to find a new method. With AI implemented, does it shorten to a couple of days or a couple of hours? How much is the difference?
Yeah, so I mean, just one example I can give, which is recently, I was discussing this with my team, so it's just coming to my mind first, but we were looking at some genome analysis and qPCRs and a little bit of, genetic analysis and looking at the DNA structure and so on for different animals. And when we did it with Wet Lab, it used to take us somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks. And with AI, we're able to do it in 4 weeks. And also the number of experiments that we used to do, let's say it was 12, we have actually brought it down to 3. So you can see the kind of way we are able to save on money, time, and effort. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for that. So now today we have alternative proteins, whether they are cell-based or plant-based or insect-based, with nutritious recipes, a delicious flavor profile. How can we kind of like ensure that the quality is there? And with the term quality, what I'm thinking about is whether the alternative protein, number one, is safe for consumption, and number two, how can we keep them fresh for consumption? So I've heard some people, not myself, saying that eating alternative protein is almost like eating a lot of preservatives, right? So let me pose this question to Prof. William first, and then Prof. Ben. How can we ensure that the alternative proteins are fresh? That's number one. And number two, safe for consumption. And considering Kelvin has a dining concept, please feel free to join me as well.
All right. Thank you for the question. I'll probably leave the safety part to Ben to elaborate later. Probably I would just mention that actually this is a very important aspect of alternative protein, in the sense that all the novel food sources will have different nutrition profile. So it's very important that we have a very good understanding on what we are developing. For example, we talk about the plant-based protein, right? So that profile is different from the animal protein profile. And in terms of freshness, right? I would say that we can actually do away with chemical preservative. As you may or may not know, that at NTU, we have developed a plant-based natural food preservative, which turns out to work much better than all the E-number preservatives. And in time to come, I will say that the freshness using our natural food preservative will be enhanced, and also this would lead to less of food waste, because the shelf life of this food produce, especially from these novel food sources, they tend to be presented to consumer in the processed form, because you don't just grow the shrimp meat or chicken meat from the lab and then sell to the supermarket. So in terms of processing steps, to ensure that the shelf life is enhanced, second, there's less chemical ingredient in the processed food. This is very important to raise awareness in consumer and also get the bigger buy-in. So I will stop here and then let the Prof. Ben to share the safety aspect of this novel food. Thanks.
Thanks, William. And I think just coming off what Prof. William just said about the consumer acceptance, that's also a key part when it comes to safety. And it's actually one of the things that drives how people look at the food and the safety of their food. When in looking at these proteins, I think that you need to look a little bit specifically at where they sort of fall in to the types of proteins and things that they are. Typically, when we're looking at a novel food, we're looking at it from the material itself and the process of how it was made when we're looking at safety aspects. So if you take something like a insect protein, that's very much a novel protein. You need to look at it as to, could it be similar to known proteins that may be allergens? Could it be similar to known toxic proteins? And you're doing that actually with AI, with structure analysis. But equally, from a quality perspective and looking at the farms and the practices, what are these insects eating? And so what are they feeding on? Are we using waste products? Are we using other things? And so very typical things that you do in any food production supply chain, looking at, are there contaminants that can arise, quality control. And so it's not really that different to what we would do for normal foods. We're just looking at different sources and processes. If you take cultured meat as an example, again, there, a lot of the interest really is on the process, because at the end of the day, the final product is a protein that is found in the animal. So we use what we call substantial equivalence. If the thing is similar to what we're actually eating already or found in nature, well, then it's substantially equivalent, and we can look at the safety based on current consumption and practices.
So just out of curiosity, Prof. Ben, would you say if it's safer to eat, cultured meat proteins, alternative proteins, compared to insect-based alternative proteins? Because essentially you're eating the meat itself that's what you have in the stream or chicken, right?
Yeah, I don't think one's safer than the other. I think that they're actually both safe, and it's all in how you do it. There are certain things you have to look for, but it's correct. Look at the Just Chicken that was brought on. Okay, it was produced a different way, and because of that production, a lot of the some of the concerns around bacteria and things that can come off the carcasses and things, you don't have that. But you have other things like media that needed to be looked at and assessed. But the final protein is the final protein. With insects, it's different. The sorts of considerations of insects are, well, one of the big things we're looking at the moment is with regard to food allergens. Insects are closely related to crustaceans. So is there a potential that with food allergy, people that are allergic to shrimp, shellfish, we know that's an issue in the population, could they have issues with insects? But again, with all foods, whether it's soy, whether it's peanuts, there are going to be some people that have these allergies, and how we do that is control it. So not one is safer than the other. It's just making sure that they get put on the market the right way, and we know how they've been produced, and we've assessed them before they go out.
Okay, so now we have the perfect answer. If anyone were to go to Kelvin or Dr. Sanjay to ask, can I eat this alternative protein? We know safety is definitely out there.
Yeah,
out of curiosity as well, Dr. Kelvin, Dr. Sanjay and Kelvin, have you had this from the consumers or the partners that you're working with? When you're trying to sell plant-based meat or cell-based meat, is safety one of the first questions they usually ask you? And how would you address their fears and concerns in this space?
Kelvin, go ahead. Yeah.
It's not actually it's not safety. It's we always get this question of, oh, it's processed. Why is it so processed? And I think it's all about balance, right? You need a balanced meal. You can't just eat alternative protein or cell-based protein or plant-based protein alone. Ideally, if all of us had a lot of time, eat whole foods, prepare everything from scratch if you can. But I think reality is we lead busy lives, so we need to make it convenient. And you can think about why you're doing this. You always have to understand that we're not, the consumers out there, they want certain products, and for this movement to work, you need to be relevant to them, right? So for example, let me give you an example about luncheon meat. So Singapore is one of the largest consumers of luncheon meat. It's not surprising. It's very tasty, right? It's huge. It's like our version of the burger, right? You grill it chars, but have you looked at the label? Professor William talked about the E numbers, and it's blowing. It's like the most endless list of stuff in there that I can't even pronounce in luncheon meat. But there's one particular ingredient there called nitrates, which is of particular concern to all of us. Consuming nitrates in large quantities, has adverse effects on our health. So that's why one of the products that Green Monday focused on, we pivoted towards, is luncheon meat, because we, not just Asians, actually, they eat a lot of luncheon meat in the American bases, in Hawaii, it's a major, it's spam, right? Who doesn't love spam? So we immediately, right after, not too long after launching Omni, we brought luncheon into the market, and it's taken the market by storm. It's disruptive because if you look at the label, it's 64% less sodium. You know, it cooks like luncheon meat. It tastes very close, actually very close. I dare you to come on a blind test with me. I dare you to be able to tell the difference between the plant-based version and the original version. I call it the original, where this is probably the only occasion where the copy is better than the original, right? Because we removed the nitrates, we reduced the salt content, but we kept the convenience, we kept the familiarity, the nostalgia about eating it when we were young, right? So, but no animals was killed in the process, and obviously used much less water and land. So this is an example of how we were able to still fulfill the consumer needs and address some of their concerns around food safety.
Well, thank you, Kelvin. Dr. Sandhya, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think a couple of points. I'll keep it short because I know we have questions as well. But just starting off from the last thing that Kelvin said, which is very true. At the end of the day, when we talk about cell-based meat, first thing is people think we are like seafood. We are like impossible seafood, like seafood alternative for Impossible or Beyond or Omnipork. So we have to go back and tell them, hey, you know what? It is alternative proteins, but we are not plant-based. So what we are making is actual real meat, and we make it from stem cells. So then we have to go back and explain, and then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And we tell them that the piece of meat that you eat currently actually has stem cells in it, has cells in it, and that's what we are making using cell-based meats. The next thing is they actually don't ask about safety, they ask about taste, price, and nutrition. These are the three things that comes up first. So it is food. You have to remember it has to be delicious. And at the end of the day, they want it to be nutrition, right? It has to be a protein source. It has to be delicious. It should look great. You want to go buy it and eat it. That's what it is. But at the same time, when people ask us, is it too processed? I'm like, how much percentage of your food that you eat per day is not processed? Will you please tell me that? You know, they don't have the answer to that. Actually, anything that you buy in the supermarket, other than the fresh veggies and fruits that are there that are uncut and whole, and other than your whole grains, everything else is processed to an extent. And then the next question they have is, oh, it's grown in the lab. And I said, see, that's the problem. We are not lab-grown meat. We are cell-based meat, cultivated meat, cultured meat, whatever you want to call it. But tell me where your Milo comes from or where your dairy milk chocolate comes from. It once in its early life, it has seen the walls of the lab. It was made in a lab initially and then came out and was made in a food safe facility. And that's exactly what we're doing. Do you think we can grow millions and tons of meat in a lab? That's never going to happen. We'll never be able to scale that. And I think convenience at the end of the day is what people want. And what we are providing is a convenient option. And like Kelvin said, Spam or burger is never healthy. Tell me which Spam and which burger is healthy that you're comparing it to plant-based and cell-based meats and saying, oh, why is yours not healthier, or so on. In fact, we are actually trying to make it healthier. We are making indulgent foods healthier so that people can eat more of it and enjoy. And I think what Prof. Ben brought up was allergies. So interestingly, we had a conversation with an allergy specialist this morning, specifically for crustaceans. So apparently most of the allergies in crustaceans comes from the environment that they grow in. So let's say an X type of shrimp grows in Australia versus grows in Vietnam. If you go eat the same shrimp in two different places, and if you're allergic to a certain element in the Australian shrimp, but it's the same species grown in Vietnam in a different kind of water, you may not be allergic to it. So it is very environment specific. It's very like what does the animal eat? Like he mentioned, you know, what does the animal eat? What does go into the animal? Of course, there are other allergies to the proteins itself within the animal, but they brought out a lot of interesting concepts and a lot to think about allergies in specific. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandhya. Kelvin, I'm going to take out the offer about the spam fries because I personally love spam fries a lot. So I will go ahead to apply blind test with you. So on this point about it being, you know, more nutritious, it could possibly even be better than the original. It reminded me of this particular dish in Singapore that I really love eating. So prawn noodles, right? Especially the big prawns. And when I eat the prawns, especially the prawn heads, people will be looking at me like there's a lot of cholesterol. Are you sure you want to eat that? So again, out of curiosity, Dr. Sandhya, is it possible for you to grow prawns in one way or another that has less cholesterol? In the sense that, when we eat it, it's technically healthier for us to eat that instead of the real prawns.
Yes, so we grow our prawn meat without any cholesterol. So there is no cholesterol. It doesn't affect the flavor. At this point, we don't do textured proteins. So at this point, we don't know if it's going to affect texture. But one thing is we want to make sure that it's cholesterol free or less cholesterol, sort of a prawn shrimp that's out there. Yeah.
How do you grow it in a way that there is less or cholesterol free?
Sure. So when you look at what shrimp is, it's actually shell and then fat, a little bit of fat, which is all cholesterol. And then there's 95% muscle. That's what the animal is. So what we do is we don't grow the shell. We don't grow the 5% fat, which is cholesterol. We grow the 95% muscle as 100% muscle, which is your meat. So that's how we grow it. So we just grow muscle cells and make shrimp meat out of it.
So that literally means I can have as many prawns as I want without worrying about the cholesterol, right?
True, but everything in moderation. Like Kelvin said,
everything in moderation.
Nobody's going to end up eating only alternative proteins as part of their 3 times a meal for 365 days of the year. I think we all need to think about portions and split our veggies with protein, with carbohydrates, and then, yeah, everything in moderation.
Well, thank you both very much for this. So it does sound to me at this point of time that alternative proteins has a lot of upside, in terms of quality, in terms of taste, in terms of health. So if we have quality taken care of on one aspect, how can we work towards increasing the quantity of, the alternative proteins? At this point of time, I hear a lot about it being, expensive to produce, hard to move it around because of supply chain and logistics limitations. This is probably one question that I would like to pose to all the panelists that we have today. Perhaps we can start off with Prof. Ben and Prof. William to share if there are any, R&D and innovation that is relevant in increasing the quantity of alternative proteins. Perhaps if food testing can be done at scale, or maybe perhaps, the plant-based preservative can be done at scale without, compromising on cost factors and stuff like that. So please.
Okay, well, I'll jump in and be very quick because I don't think I'm the expert on this panel to talk about production scale up. That's William and others. But a lot is being done. And I think the key thing is also looking at what capabilities we have here in Singapore where we can add to that. So a lot of attention for Singapore, as an example, is going into fermentation processes and making sure that we can get the right bugs to produce higher levels of protein and evolve them to produce higher levels of protein, or the cultured meat, which can also be done, of course, through fermentation processes as well. And so, yeah, so I think that's my sort of 2 cents worth, but you better to speak to the others on that one.
Thanks, Prof. Ben.
Well, maybe I'm not an expert either. I think later we'll hear from Sandhya, maybe at the larger scale. So my 2 cents is that there are ways to train the animal cell to be vegetarian, right? So that means that we can slowly do away with fetal bovine serum. I think that is a critical step to really do away with separate the cultivated meat from the traditional animal farming. Yeah, because if we still keep the fetal bovine serum, then we are not actually changing anything, right? So at NTU, we are already moving towards this training process, and we are making progress. But at this point in time, I don't think we're in a position to talk about the challenges at the scale-up level. So I probably leave these to Kelvin and Sandhya to comment. Thanks.
So it does sound like Dr. Sandhya and Kelvin will be better positioned to address the questions about scaling out and cost. They probably have a lot of feedback from customers about the cost of the alternative proteins as well. So perhaps we can, have Dr. Sandhya, Kelvin, one of you, please.
I mean, we we as in all the brands that we represent in Green Monday, including Omni, we've always been looking at reducing our costs, right? And supply and demand, I mean, it's linked, if you look at what's happening in Europe and US, it's no longer expensive buying plant-based products. Actually, I'm surprised at the prices in London. I mean, if you go shopping in the supermarket in London, you can pretty much get everything for under £5, right? So now it's supply and demand. So if you look at some of the products in Asia, you've seen the prices come down quite significantly. If you look at Omni Meat, for example, now, today as we speak, you can buy 2 packs for $9. So it's $4.50 a pack of 230 grams. That's very much on par, if not very close to the price of meat. Now, but one major difference between the plant-based prices and the conventional meat prices is that, I mean, it doesn't take a scientist to figure this out. I mean, look at the price of bakwa, right? So bakwa is now, I think if I last checked, it was $65 a kilo. Pork doesn't cost $65 a kilo. Conversion of minced pork from raw form to a jerky it doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't equate, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the prices of pork or meats in general, be it chicken, beef, pork, seafood, will go up because as the population goes from 7.9 billion to 10 billion, there's not enough protein. So from that sheer fact, there's not enough animal protein to feed the world. Prices will only go in one direction where there's not enough supply. It's up. So be it cell-based, be it insect-based, be it plant-based, we have a role to play to bring that cost down. The good news is that our prices can only go in one direction. That's down. So we're going in the opposite direction of animal-based or intensive farm-based proteins. So there's a huge upside potential in bringing that cost down as more demand grows. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it as we live today. Today's the 3rd of February. I'm seeing that happen. It's very interesting, very fascinating to see my shelves emptied out, right? It's emptied out. Our luncheon is really selling very quickly. We have Just, we carry the folded Just egg. It's sold out. We're completely sold out of Just. So, there is demand, but right now, it's only appealing to a certain category of the market, which is prepared to pay a little bit more for it. But I think it's just a matter of time. Probably in the next 12, 24 months, you will see prices becoming very, very interesting in this market as all the big players start reducing their pricing because their manufacturing bases have also relocated to Asia. And when that happens with China, with Singapore being a major manufacturing hub for these products, then we've got the benefit of AFTA, which is the zeroizing the tax between ASEAN countries. Then we go into some serious pricing that would make it accessible to more people. And then you find that big change happening. Yeah. So it's very exciting to be in this space right now.
I think Kelvin covered it all. But I think we are seeing it, we are living through it where the prices are going down for plant-based meats. It's not something that we as alternative protein companies are saying. It's something that you as consumers can see it happening. It's just not the media covering. You can actually see that happening with the price tags in the supermarkets and in the restaurants and so on. And that's the same case for cell-based meats. Listen, in the whole world, there's only one product that's been approved and that's going to be, be sold, or rather it's already being sold in Singapore. And even then it's at $23 in a elite premium restaurant. Like, what more do you need? Just wait for us to launch. The entire cell-based meat industry is 5 years old. So give us some time to launch and then tell us, let's say 5 years down the line, we're still super pricey, then come and ask us why it's super pricey. But wait for us to get there and give us some time to reduce our pricing. We will eventually get it to a point where it's actually going to be cheaper than conventional meat, that you'll end up buying more plant-based and cell-based. And also the fact that conventional meat is just not going to be available for you. Studies have shown that fish is literally going to be not available to be caught in the oceans in the next 20 years. Then what are you going to do? Where are you going to find your seafood from? What fish are you going to eat? What shrimp are you going to eat? So you'll have to think about all of this.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Sandhya and Kelvin. So I think the thing about novelty is people are willing to pay very high prices for that. Just because there's a new kind of product in the alternative protein space being launched to the market, they usually go to high-end restaurants, which people are willing to pay a lot of money for it. Something similar to why people are willing to pay a lot of money for truffle fries, when technically there's no truffle in the truffle fries itself. Okay, so I think we are running a little bit short of time. I want to make sure that we have a good amount of time to tackle some of the Q&A questions as well. I do have one last question on my end. I've heard a lot of friends, when they make about this consideration, they switch from proteins to alternative proteins. It could be for novelty, it could be health, but one of the main points they seem to have in mind is sustainability. They believe by eating alternative protein, they are contributing and doing their part in ensuring that sustainability aspects being taken care of globally. And I know each of every panelist today have sustainability as a matter of heart, a matter of something that's very close to their heart. And I'd like to take an opportunity to hear from everyone in terms of how sustainability is part and parcel of the work you do, the goal you're trying to drive towards it, and some of the exciting innovations that you may have come across. So perhaps I could kickstart this with Prof. Willem. I know you do have a lot of R&D work in this space and dealing with food wastes and ensuring that sustainability considerations being taken care of. Could you maybe share some perspective that you have? Thank you.
Well, this is a tough question because it can be very broad, it can be very specific depending on where your interest lies, right? So from NTU's R&D perspective, I think we are more focusing on how to reduce food waste. This is an important factor because if we just push for primary production without maximizing the utilization of available food, then it's never enough, regardless of population growth, environment, climate change, all this. So I think this is about tightening the gaps in between different components in the food system. So I see this alternative protein sources, be it insect from the nature or this cultivated meat from the lab, are really a very a good option for our future food system. I'm personally not in favor of saying that, once we have this Green Monday, we forget about everything else. Once we have this Sandhya's shrimp, just don't go to the white market to get fish and prawns, right? So I think having more options is always good. Yeah. So this is how I see sustainability is actually not to sort of a total replacement of what we're having now, and more towards building an efficient food system while providing consumer with more options. And this is my view. Yep.
So Prof. Willem, I do have one additional question for you. I know that with your work at NTU, you look at converting food waste into usable products in the F&B industry. Could you share some of the new innovations that you're looking at this point of time?
Oh, okay. So, okay. So we are trying to actually maximize the nutrient recovery from the side stream, for example. And that is not just, I mean, Ben mentioned is a fermentation. I think that is a very useful technology, has a very wide application in the food space. But fermentation would not remove everything, rather recover everything from the side stream. So you still have a lot of solid residues. We are lucky to bump into these fiber-rich solid residues, so we have managed to convert them into biodegradable packaging materials. And by the same token, before Sandhya's shrimp meat take over the whole seafood industry, we are still dealing with a lot of prawn shells, lobster shell, all kind of shell thing. And they so happen to be very rich in the chitin. So we use fermentation again to remove all the sort of substances that are not relevant to our interest. That includes minerals and protein and lipids. So we use the fermentation to remove all these things. At the end of the day, we have this enriched chitin and chitosan, and then we make again something useful either for biomedical application or for these biodegradable antimicrobial packaging materials. So so there are many ways that we can maximize the food and not just food itself, but also side streams around us. And so by doing so, we actually minimize, reduce the pressure on the primary production. And if we look at the nutrition requirement, I think it's very important to not neglecting the nutrition requirement, especially for Singapore, the aging population, right? So nutrition requirement, then we will sort of, once we have covered this part, then we really have a very robust urban food system. The idea here is that then how much is useful for Singapore, a small city state. The idea here is that once we have this robust food system with various components, very little waste generation, and with all these new options from alternative food space, then we can propagate to the region, to the world. Then only then I think we can see the impact. Yeah. I think I talked too much. Sorry. Thank you.
No, not at all a problem. It actually reminded me of a particular startup that I've met some time ago. I'm sure a lot of us have seen these orange juice vending machines popping up around Singapore. So this particular startup actually goes and collects the orange peel from these machines and then convert it into various products like essential oils. They convert it to cleaning solutions and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. Kelvin and Dr. Sandhya, just maybe to wrap up in terms of this point on sustainability. When you launched your business or when you're building a startup, was it because you really see a huge problem when it comes to the agri-food space, sustainability wise, especially Dr. Satya mentioned that, how many years of fish do we still get to eat, right? Is that the main core factor that's driving you to do that? And is that somewhat also one of the main reasons that your customers are attracted towards trying your products as well?
Yeah. For us, definitely it's sustainability. So we have done a couple of surveys, especially we're looking to publish a survey that's Singapore-wide, and 78%, I think, said that it's because of sustainability reasons. They're worried what's going to happen to their seafood, what's happening to the sea animals, but they can't stop eating it because they love it too much. So they are looking for alternative options, which is great. So they are thinking about it, and that's why they're looking for alternatives. That's why they're going on Google and searching for what else can I eat instead of this and make sure that I have enough sea animals left in the ocean. So for sure. Yeah. Kelvin, go ahead.
I mean, Green Monday is all about sustainability. That's what we do. So for those, in the audience who don't know this, we've actually conducted quite a lot of corporate events, with the banks. Obviously, most of the banks we've done already, Facebook, LinkedIn, Marina Bay Sands. So we've done these corporate events because if you look at it, by going plant-based, you actually have a huge impact on carbon. As you know, animals, primarily the cow actually, produces a lot of methane. And methane, it's a major contributor to greenhouse gases, right? Much more than all the cars and planes and trucks and motorcycles that we all drive. So by that alone, just CO2 reduction is a massive sustainable reduction. But the other thing is also it addresses 13 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set up by the United Nations, right? So that's a lot. I mean, from CO2 to water to land use, both above and below water. So again, little steps, right? Little steps. Don't try to. Rome wasn't conquered overnight, right? So step by step, right? Don't go cold turkey. So don't try this cold turkey. It doesn't work. I've tried it. It doesn't work. So go slowly. So start taking out start replacing the stuff that is very dear and important to you. And then, I mean, red meat, you know, again, for example, red meat isn't exactly very healthy for you. So maybe you want to start there and take some of that red meat out of your system, and then slowly gravitate towards a more lighter, a more nutritious, cleaner, healthier lifestyle. You must exercise. So if you eat well and you don't exercise and you don't move about, that's not going to work either. So it's all encompassing. It's a lifestyle, right? So it's how you live your life, how you treat others. It's how others treat you, you know, and how you appreciate the ethnicity. Where does food come from? And, you know, to Professor Williams' point is, if you can't finish it, don't order it, right? So why do you have to order so much food, especially during Chinese New Year, right? So order just enough for you. If it's not enough, order again. You know, you don't have to do everything at one sitting. So that whole mindset of, you know, I'm wealthy, I can afford it, I should order a lot of food, I think that is a problem. So mindfulness about how we consume our food, portion control, right? And then you'll find that we have enough food for everybody. We waste less food, and then the world becomes a much more sustainable place for all of us.
Thank you, Kelvin and Dr. Sandhya, for your perspective. Now, Kelvin, since that we have you on the line as well, I would like to move into the Q&A. I noticed we only have like a couple of minutes left, so I think we can do about 2 to 3 questions from the Q&A. I do have an interesting question from Yifei. The question being, how can we commercialize and popularize alternative proteins such that hawkers will start using them? You know, Singapore has really strong hawker culture, right?
Yes.
Okay, we take, for example, lap chong in my char kway teow to something that is more plant-based, that's potentially healthier. Yeah,
Yes.
you really start to see alternative proteins in the supermarket. They are still rather expensive. So please take us away with your perspective.
Yes. So for those who are still living in a cave, just to let you know, it is available in our hawker centers. So we are, so Omni Meat is available in more than 36 hawkers in Singapore. If you don't know where they are, just go to our website, and there's a restaurant finder. So go to omnimeat.co, and you can find where they are. I would highly recommend the jixiangzhou, which is the porridge that Daily Green serves. It sells out by noon. So if you want to go, please go at 10 in the morning. It's all over. It's not in the town. It's actually in the heartlands. It's sold at $4.20 a bowl. So if $4.20 is too expensive for you, I really don't know what I can do to bring this further. At MGS, in Methodist Girls' School, you can get a bowl of Omni wonton noodles at $1.80. A child, a student, can buy $1.80, which is probably a pack of sweets now. You know, in Singapore, you can't get a lot of things for $1.80. So it is already affordable. So you just have to, you know, read about it, you know, be in tune. Don't keep going to all your meat sites. You know, look at what the other world is about, the plant-based sites. The other thing I would also like to bring to your attention, because it is coming, it's 9 days to Chinese New Year. We actually have a wet market in Chinatown that is open now. It's called the Future Butcher. And there's no butchering involved in this butcher. It's 100% plant-based, and the prices in this wet market obviously would be lower compared to the modern trade where most of us shop in. So go support. It's also social, so it's run by a father and a daughter team. So it's a career for them. You know, for them it's their livelihood. Go and support them. It's 100% plant-based. It's in Chinatown, where everyone is heading to now for Chinese New Year.
Near the fruit store. I think it's near
the
next to the fruit
store.
store. Yeah, I know that place.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's there. Support them, and if it's successful, we would like this to pop up all over Singapore and make it accessible. We would like hundreds of hawkers to come on board this journey. We will lay the roadmap for Sanya to come in with her cell base, and you know, this is how it's going to work, because this is where we consume our food. We all don't go to the hotels and the, you know, and the resorts for our meals. We go to the hawker, myself included, and that's where the great tasting food is. It's in our hawkers. So being able to provide laksa, chicken rice, nasi lemak, you know, biryani in our wet market, in our hawker centers at affordable pricing, That is the goal for Green Monday. We will get there. We are already partially there, but we need to scale up, get more hawkers on board.
Well, thanks a lot for your sharing, Kevin. I'm really thinking about Thai basil pork rice, bak chor mee using Omni pork, and I must say, considering we're quite near dinner time, it's making me quite hungry. We have time for one last question, and I think this will be addressed to Dr. Sandhya. The question is, in developing shiok meat product from stem cells, what are some of the regulatory barriers that you have to deal with? Do you have to especially beyond Singapore, if you're looking to sell into Southeast Asia, what kind of challenges have you encountered? Do you think there will also be a shift towards, this alternative proteins in the surrounding Southeast Asia countries?
Oh, for sure. If you'd asked me the same question last year, I would have said, yeah, Singapore might be the first country, but it is the first country. But what's happened is having a product being approved by Singapore has kind of woken up the other countries to an extent. We're definitely seeing much more interest in India right now. Japan was one of, recent news has shown that Japan might be the second country ever to approve cell-based meats. Taiwan and Korea are looking at it, Hong Kong, of course, as well. So we're seeing the different sectors kind of waking up. Israel, I mean, I was at another event just before this, which was Israel, and Singapore and Israel are trying to tie up together to see if, let's say, if you're getting approved in Singapore, can Israel also just approve it automatically instead of going through an entire 6 months process or a year's process. So we're seeing countries coming together to see if they can work together to make that happen. And I mean, honestly, looking at the regulatory framework, I don't think it's going to take much time for other countries to pick up and, launch these products. I mean, Ben, you might have something to add on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think once these things start, it becomes a domino effect. And the thing that really is it's the national position, and certain countries have certain legislations that they have to pass to allow it to go through first. But now that Singapore have put the stake in the sand, we are seeing a lot of other countries, and many other countries were also at the cusp as well. So it's a matter of time, and it's as more products, I think, start coming onto the market, and SGInnovate and others start bringing their products to the regulators, that will only speed it up as well, because they're getting to see more of these products and understand them better, and it will just push it forward quicker.
So from our end at SGInnovate, we do have a good amount of companies coming all around the world, looking for investments, looking for market opportunities in Singapore, because our SFA is known to be a lot more progressive than some of the other regulators that you may have in this region. I think we are quite short of time because Brian suddenly appeared on screen. So I just want to take a couple of seconds to thank all of our panelists for your time and perspective today. It's been an extremely exciting and interesting session for me. Alternative proteins, I'm sure it's going to be one of the main topics that we have for the next few years to come. Especially, we are looking forward to the 30 by 30 goals that we have in Singapore. So I think Brian, at this point of time, will come and do a little bit of the closing statements. So over to you, Brian.
Okay, thank you so much, David. Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately we're out of time, and as the famous saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Yeah, so I feel like with such an exciting topic like alternative proteins, we could just go on for hours and hours, as there are so many different aspects of alternative proteins to cover. Once again, I would like to thank all our speakers, Sandhya, Kelvin, Benjamin, William, and as well as David for their valuable insight and knowledge about the alternative protein space. I would also like to thank our partner, Tsupo and Lucas over at SMUAI for making today's event possible. Unfortunately, we won't have enough time to answer all the questions, but I think that's just proof of how what an insightful and amazing a session we had today. Okay, so for our audience today, do take note that we'll be sending out a post-event email with important information, including a recording for this webinar. So do keep an eye out for that. And with that, we have come to the end of our webinar today. So thank you all for spending your Wednesday evening with us. And on behalf of SGInnovate, I would like to wish you all a great week ahead. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next event. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.